Let's think about what you learned so far regarding form validation using JavaScript. You know how to make radio buttons, text boxes, number text boxes, password text boxes, check boxes, selection lists, text areas. Okay, and in terms of making sure the user enters valid data, you know how to make sure the user has to type something in. You add the required property. You can also add autofocus onto the first form element. We can say text box type equals input, or sorry, type equals text, type equals password, type equals number, and so on. Okay, our selection list, we can make the first option helpful, a helpful message with no value. For number text boxes, we can set min, max, step, and we can also use the pattern property for text boxes for regular expressions. Okay, that's all fine to a certain extent, and I'm certainly not trying to denigrate HTML validation. It's extremely useful, and the idea here is that we want to do the validation on the client side whenever possible. Okay, because if we don't do it on the client side, we're going to have to do it on the server side, and that means you click the submit button, the data is going to go back to the server. The server is going to spend some time running code, probably PHP, to try and figure out, is this data input valid? Okay, if it's not valid, the server is going to have to send a message back to the client. That all takes time, and if you have 100,000, 500,000 usages of a particular web page form every day, every hour even, you're talking about some serious loss of efficiency of the server, okay, and slowness of the system. So we try and push our validation on the client side as much as possible. Okay, we cannot do all our validation using HTML validation on the client side. Okay, so for example, supposing we needed to get a number from the user, and we just had an ordinary text box, and the user typed FOUR. Okay, you click the submit button. That's going to go to the server. The server is going to have to try and figure that out, find out that it's not a number, send a message back to the client side. Very, very time consuming. Okay, so easiest way around that? Yeah, right. Okay, use a number text box straight away. Maybe we want to limit the range. We don't want a negative number. Okay, we can set the min to be 0 or 0.1, something like that. Okay, phone numbers, another great barrel of laughs here. Okay, do we let the bracket, do we type the bracket in? Are we expecting the user to do that? Is there a hyphen between the first 3 digits and the next 4 digits, or space? This causes a lot of issues, okay, a lot of problems. To try and sort out all that with HTML validation is not a handy way to do it, and not possible sometimes. Okay, so we have no recourse but to go and use another programming language, okay, which is actually very like Java, called JavaScript. Okay, so JavaScript is a programming language that we use typically on the client side on web pages. Okay, so we're going to get into that this semester, for the first half of the semester, and we are going to try and write some JavaScript to validate a form in a bit more detail, but we're not going to throw the HTML baby out with the bathwater. We're still going to use HTML validation. Okay, so let's take a look at a scenario here. Okay, so it's a web page that is trying to get people to donate money. Okay, so very much above board, Honest Phil's Benevolent Fund. Okay, so donations up to €1 million from anywhere in the world. So what I want you to be thinking about as I'm going through this, as you're going through this, is, you know, every time you come across something significant, what should you be thinking of? Form element. What's the best form element to try and trap that information? Okay, how can I make sure the information being typed or being picked for that form element is valid? Okay, can I do it with HTML, or do I need to start thinking programmatically about it? Okay, so keep in mind all the Java you've learned so far, all the string functions, etc., loops, if statements, and so on, because all that's going to be very useful to us here. Okay, so donations up to €1 million from anywhere in the world. Okay, so we try to give you as bare a spec as possible here, but yet each word is essentially important and significant. Donations are to be accepted using credit debit cards. Okay, so there's something to think about. What about the number range for each of the various types of credit cards, debit card? What about picking a particular type of debit card? What's the best way to do this? Are there hundreds of different types of credit cards, or are there only a few? How would you put those values, those names, credit card names, debit card names, on a web page? Okay, what do you normally see for these pieces of information on web pages? Okay, the user must input a valid password and also an identical confirm password. Okay, typically with a password, when you're creating a password, you need to think about how strong it is. Okay, ABCDE, is that a good password? How might we make it stronger? And how might we tell the user, yeah, that's kind of weak enough, pathetic enough, come on, you can do better, or you want the user to put in a really strong password that's difficult to decrypt and hack into. Okay, so let's assume the user has typed everything in, or picked everything valid, and then finally click on the submit button. If it's valid, you want to see the donor's first name on the second web page, the thank you page. And at a later time, somebody from the charity will both email and phone the donor to thank them. Okay, so how are they going to do that? They're only going to do that if they have the email, if they have the phone number. Okay, and remember, this is from somebody donating from anywhere in the world. Okay, so what does that tell you about phone numbers? How are we going to think about that? Okay, sorry, I should have done that. Okay, so some constraints here. We're trying to give you enough room to play with here, but also enough room to kind of say this is what you must have. Okay, as few form elements as possible, just enough to get the required information. There should be plenty of helpful information available for completing each form element. Okay, in an ideal world, when someone is completing a form element, they shouldn't have to think about it. Okay, it should be logical. The sequence of all the form elements should make sense. Okay, it should flow nicely. You're asking the user to fill out a story about themselves, and you don't want to be sort of jarring them. You don't want them to be thinking about it. It's like a good goalkeeper, a football match. A good goalkeeper is always in the right position. Okay, they're not doing anything fancy, because all the fancy stuff, if you like, has been done beforehand in their head. They know, they have a very good idea where the ball is going to go, so they're positioned there in time. Okay, so your form web pages should be like that too. Okay, should be intuitive for the user. If there's a possibility the user gets stuck, they should immediately know, how can I get help on this little bit? Is there somewhere on the page that would help me? Okay, so let's look through a web page that might fit the bill for all these constraints and requirements. Okay, so that's coming up in the next video.